Hello, sixth graders. Welcome to 6.4 of chapter 6, where we're talking about data collection and analysis. And today we're going to talk about a few different ways that you can display data. And those ways are with line plots, frequency tables, and histograms. They might sound confusing, but I don't want you to get too caught up in their names. Rather, just understand it's a way to show data, right? Kind of like any type of graph or chart. So we'll start with the vocab, and our first vocabulary word is frequency. And all that is the number of times a data value occurs. So I'll show you that, but really it's like repeated values. So how frequently does it occur? If it occurs twice or three times or four times. A frequency table then is a table that tells the number of times an event, category, or group occurs. So it's really just organizing your data into a table by saying, here's how many times this number occurs. A line plot is a display that uses a number line and X's or other symbols. Sometimes they're not X's, but we'll use X's to show frequencies of data. And we'll do a line plot here coming up. And lastly, a histogram is a bar graph. And I know you've all done bar graphs before. That shows the number of data items that occur within equal intervals. So intervals are like a range from maybe 0 to 10 or 0 to 5. And it shows intervals, not quite necessarily just specific numbers, but ranges of numbers. Okay, so I'll show you these three today, and I think you'll catch on. To me, these are just fancy names for ways of displaying data. Right, in example one, it says students in Mr. Ray's class recorded their fingerprint patterns. Kind of cool. Everybody has a different fingerprint, even identical twins. It says, which type of pattern is most common? So we're just going to take this data and organize it. Again, that's really what we're doing. We're organizing data. So the first step in that is to make a column for each fingerprint pattern. So you'll see here, they did that. They made a table here showing the whirl, the arch, and the loop. Those are the different patterns that we'll talk about or that I guess scientists or anybody in the medical profession talk about with fingerprints. And step two, after we've made kind of our table here, which this one's done for you, for each fingerprint, make a tally mark in the appropriate column. So let's count how many whirls we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm counting 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And on the fifth one, make it diagonal so it's easy to count. 5 whirls. The arches, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And in the loops, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the question asks, which type of pattern is most common? Well, now it's really easy to look at our data table that we made and say, Mr. Ray's class, most students have an arch fingerprint. All right, let's move on to the next example. And this example, it says students collected tennis balls for a project. The number of balls collected by the students is recorded in the table. So just another good way to keep track of some data. And it wants us to make a line plot now. Right, so let's change colors here. We're going to make a line plot for this. So the first step is to draw a number line. And I might use a little bit more space than what they have here, just because it's a little bit trickier to draw. And I'll look at my numbers here and see what range do I need on my number line. You don't always have to start at 0. And it looks like my smallest number is 10, so I'll start with 10. And it goes up to 16, so 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. I guess I didn't need to make it quite so long. Okay. Let me try this eraser, see if that works. Oof, I was worried that was going to happen. Here we go. Okay, so after you've drawn your number line, now use an X on the number line to represent the number of, and in this case, we're talking about the number of tennis balls collected. How many 10s are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'd put 4 X's then. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the 10 spot. 11s, I've got 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. 12s, I don't have any. 13s, I don't have any. 14 is next. I have 2 14s. And 15s, I have 2 as well. And lastly, I have 1 16. All right. And what this allows me to do is quickly look at it and say, okay, most students or the majority of students brought either 10 or 11 tennis balls in. I had 4 students bring in 10 tennis balls. Again, it's just a way of organizing my data. Let's check out example 3 and how a frequency table works. So that last one was a line plot. And here we're going to make a frequency table. Change colors again. So make a frequency table with intervals. All right, so we're talking about pages read last week. So here's my different data, 12, 5, 15, 22, so on and so forth. Okay, the first step it wants me to do is to choose equal intervals. Right, so that just means for my intervals here, choose equal numbers. Well, the lowest I see that I have 5, and the highest that I have is 40. So if I split up my table in 4 columns here, I could go up by 10s each time and get to 40. So for example, I could go anywhere from 1 page to 10 pages read would be an interval. And keep going up by that same amount each time. So 11 to 20, 21 to 30, and 31 to 40, because 40 is my highest number. It's a little bit blurry there. 31 to 40. And then I just have to count, find the number of data values in each interval, and write these numbers in the frequency row. So when you're setting up your table, set it up similar to this. You'll have to do it from scratch. There's already a lot done here for you in the notes, but your title goes up top. So pages read last weekend, and then you split it into number and frequency. So how many times do I come up with a data point of 1 through 10? Well, 5 fits in there, and so does 7. So I have 2 possibilities, 5 and 7. So my frequency, there's 2 times where I read from 1 to 10 pages last week. Okay, how about from 11 to 20? It looks like I've got 12, 15, 18, and 19. So 4 different times that I read 11 to 20 pages. 21 to 30 pages, I've got, I just see the 1, 22. So just 1. And then 31 to 40 pages would fit in with these 3, those 3 times. Okay. So that's, again, just organizing your data a little bit better to see, in this case, the pages you read last week. All right, the last arrangement or organization tool that we'll talk about today is called a histogram. All right, so let me get my screen sketch out here. And a histogram, like we said in the vocabulary to start, is kind of like a bar graph. So it says use the frequency table from example 3, the one that we just made, to make a histogram. So what we need to do then is look back at example 3, and we'll use that information to make kind of like a bar graph, if you will. So the first thing that we need to do is choose an appropriate scale and interval. So draw a bar for the number of students in each interval, and the bars should touch but not overlap. Title and graph and label. So I'll start it out pretty big. Hopefully you can draw a little bit straighter lines than I can on my computer here. And I like to start with a title. You can wait to step 3 if you want, but I like to start. And what we were talking about were pages read last weekend. And then I need to think about my different axes. What was I talking about? Well, I was talking about students. So over here I'll have students. And we were talking about the number of pages that they read. All right, so here is where I will include my same interval as what I had before. So I had 1 to 10. I had 11 to 20. And again, I'm getting this data from the last example. I had 21 to 30. And lastly, I had 31 to 40. Okay. And then I'm going up here. I think the most that I had from the frequencies was 4. So we'll just go up to 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So how many students read 1 to 10 pages? Well, that was 2. So I'll go to 2 here. How many students read from 11 to 20 pages. That was 4. So 2, 3, 4. All right. 21 to 30 pages was 1 student. You kind of see how I'm connecting all of them here and making bars. And then lastly, there were 3 students. So 3 students that read 31 to 40 pages. And then I would just shade in my information here. And it's very visual. Again, I can see that there were 2 students that read 1 to 10 pages last weekend. There were 4 students that read 11 to 20 pages in a book last weekend. So that's kind of how you go about it. It's very similar to a bar graph, except we use these intervals and we hook them together in a histogram. All right. And today, with doing the 2 check it out problems, you can pause the video now and then come back to see if you got it right. Number 1 says students in Miss Gracie's class recorded their fingerprint patterns. Which type of pattern do most students have? I guess you could technically just count them 2. And in this case, it's the whirl. And in the second one, it wanted you to make a line plot for that data. So my smallest number looks like it's 5. And my biggest number looks like it's 10. And I have 2 5s, so I'll put 2 X's. I have 3 6s, 2 7s, 2 8s, 2 9s, and 1 10. This data is pretty spread out, but a quick glance, you can see that 3 students collected 6 paper clips, and that's the most. But all we had to do was make a line plot just to organize our data. All right, that concludes lesson 4. I will see you next time.